Had that session over there. We'll be done. Sorry to wait here. Okay. Wait a minute. Where were we? What question were we on? We were on 4. Technician A says the manufacturer's service information may only be found in printed service manuals, and you know that's not right. Technician B says automobile manufacturers, as well as aftermarket publishers, produce electronic service information databases that are accurate and efficient to use. That's true. B is Technician B. So there was a time when the only thing you had was a book. Books were expensive. That's what you got behind you up there on the shelf, and it cost a lot of money to keep those updated. But the stuff that you've got available in ALLDATA runs from 82 to 2012, and it'll fill all of these walls up and then some with the books, if you had the actual book. Which type of service information would a technician use to find the International Automotive Technicians? You're going to use the internet for that, ITN. And I've done that. Basically, that's an information sharing thing, and it's kind of like Identifix. Identifix is cool because I always liken it to being in a room with imagine yourself, remember all the people that are in a conference center just now, talking to 1,000 mechanics that had already worked on all different kinds of cars. And you could just be able to go in front of all them people and say, look, I've got a Chevrolet that's doing this, this, and this, and it's got me sort of stumped. And about half a dozen say, oh, I've already been there. I figured this, this, and this out. You say, oh, son of a gun. And so you go right to your problem. I mean, it really helps you. That's what Identifix is good for, because people share information. Now, on Identifix, you got to be a little bit careful, because sometimes somebody will, I'm not going to say they share false information, but they share information that's not exactly accurate like you'd think it would be. So it's not a shop manual. Basically, you got to still think with your, noggin on stuff like that. I've run into situations where what they said wasn't exactly right, or they put the wrong words or something like that. But most of the time, pretty accurate. Consider a metric bolt with a size M12 by 1.5. Which of the following is true? Now, you guys know your bolt sizes, right? You know your bolt sizes? Pretty good?
I don't know too well.
Yeah. 12 millimeters is about as big as what? What size is 12 millimeter?
12 millimeters, a little bit smaller than half an inch.
Just a little smaller than half an inch. 13 millimeters is a little larger than half an inch, but usually those 2 inches will interchange. 14 millimeters is a little smaller than 9/16. You see what I'm saying? Now, what's 1.5 mean?
1.5?
Yeah. When it says right here in this question, the M12 by 1.5, what does that sound bill is 1.5 talking about?
It'd be the threads, wouldn't it?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the way that metric threads are figured, you got the threads like little mountains. You're measuring how far it is from one thread to the next, 1.5 millimeters. Did you know that? You know, when you're looking at the threads on the side of a bolt, yeah, it's 1.5. That means it's like 1.5 millimeters from here to here. And if the lower the number, the finer the thread. Got that? Now, that being said, on your standard bolts, like your the higher the number on those, in other words, the higher the number on a metric bolt, the coarser the thread. Like it goes, 0.75, 1.0, 1.5, 1.75, 2.0, and you go higher with those numbers, you're getting coarser and coarser and coarser with your threads. Now, I want you to be able to look at those and recognize them by just looking at them, okay? As a matter of fact, I got a little worksheet on that where I hand it to you, and you tell me what you think it is. And your wrench sizes, you need to be able to look at those too. You'll get better at it as time goes on. And we all misguess occasionally. You'll say, I would have sworn that was a 19 millimeter, but it's an 18 or whatever. Or if you're in too close to it or in the wrong place, it's hard to tell sometimes. But at the same time, on the metric, on the standard bolts, the higher the number, the finer. The more number of turns. The higher the number, the finer the thread. So it goes the opposite direction. You see what I'm saying?
And then on those, it's how many, the number represents how many in an inch.
Yeah, exactly. How many turns that bolt has to go to move an inch is what a standard bolt does. So if you got a SAE, if it's a 24, like 1024, a number 10 machine screw 24 threads, you got to turn it 24 times to go in. If it's a 15 or a 16 rather, or something like that, you only got to do 18, so it's going to be a portion thread. Just kind of get acclimated to that. That's what's important. Okay, now right here, let me go right here. Technician A always uses factory replacement hardened bolts for brake and suspension repairs. I think that's pretty wise, you know, because some bolts, not all bolts are created equal, and some bolts are soft, and some bolts will shear in an extreme stress. And if you've got brakes, you know, whenever you're, when you think about it, those little bolts that bolt that cage for those disc pads, you know, whenever you're having to take the rotor off on some of them, you got to take the caliper off, and then you got to take this cage off that goes around the caliper, and you got two bolts going in there, and those two bolts are having to carry the whole weight of that car when you're hitting the brakes. They got to prevent, I mean, they got to resist shearing off. And somebody says, well, I got a bolt here that'll screw in here, and they just screw it in there with a grade 2 or something. That thing's liable to shear off, and all of a sudden you got no brakes. So it's always a good idea to go back with the real. I like to get the one that's actually built for it, or one. If you can't get that, get one that's harder, like a grade 8. You know, the grade 8's the one with, or the one with higher. Do you know how the hardness of metric bolts is determined, guys? The hardness is the number. The higher the number, the harder the bolt. It may 8.8, 10.9. You remember see that on the head of the metric bolt, like this right here. Look at that bolt right there. Look at the number on the top of it. You see a number like that on top of it? It's metric. And that one that you got there, I don't know what it is, but it may be standard or it may be metric. I don't know. That's a metric bolt. That's a 12 millimeter thing. But anyway.
Lines on the head is standard.
Exactly. The lines on the head. 3 lines is grade 5. 6 lines is grade 8, and that kind of thing. Okay. So anyway, technician A there. Technician B says tensile strength describes how much a bolt can twist before breaking. That's actually, tensile strength's got to do with pulling. Technician, let's see, which of the following statements about fasteners is right? Some nuts have straight lines to show their strength. That's what you just said. Yeah, some plain flat metal washers will act to hold the fastener together once it's been properly tightened. Interference fit type fasteners fit together easily and require thread locking compound. Prevailing torque nuts are designed to be used only once because they're designed to keep them at their proper tightness. Now those questions, this right here, you don't typically see nuts with lines on them. Nuts. The nuts, the part that looks like a donut, right? Okay. Plain flat metal washers. The people that sell nuts and bolts, these people that are nuts and bolts experts will tell me. Now actually the answer to that question is supposed to be D, but the plain flat metal washers, he asked me one day when we were talking about that, because I always put lock washer, you know, when you're putting bolts together, when you're bolting two pieces of something together, like this right here, the way that I always like to do it is I like to put a flat washer under the head of the bolt, and I like to put a flat washer under the nut, but also a lock washer under the nut. See what I'm saying? If it's a bolt and nut situation, and that lock washer looks like that, and then your bolt be sticking out here. You know, have flat washers pinching your load and that lock washer there. But now this bolt salesman from Tifco, he said, how often have you ever seen bridges? You know these bridges that are put together with bolts? You ever seen a big giant bridge construction? He says, do they use lock washers on bridges? No, they don't. He says, the fact is, and this is what the nut and bolts guy said. Now this is not an automotive thing. Of course you got to realize with a car things are moving and there's a lot of dynamics and a lot of temperature changes and all that. But he was saying that if you put flat washers on either side and you tighten that thing up good, it comes like one piece of metal anyway. But I don't know if you could apply that in every situation, but that nut and bolt guy was just convinced in his mind that lock washers were unnecessary. So whatever. Anyway, D is the right one. You know what a self-locking nut is? You guys know? Yeah, it's either staked or nylon. It's got something to make it hard to turn when it gets past a certain point so it won't back off on its own. And you know, in your aircraft, they always use these castellated nuts with cutter keys and stuff. What in the world is he doing? Castellated nuts, they always use these cotter keys stuff. And what's really scary about those is how easy they screw on and off if somebody pulls the cotter key out. Some of you might remember seeing Blue Thunder when that guy sabotaged that helicopter by just pulling a cotter key out. And you can see that thing just spinning around this way and that bolt coming up and down, and when it finally came off, he lost control. That's always been spooky to me, even to just see that. I mean, to see that on that movie was scary, you know. But anyway, I don't like to see nuts and bolts come loose. It's bad news. Which of the following soldering tools produce the least heat? Look at this. Oh, this is a brilliant question. Well, actually it is. I thought I was through the same answer, but I was wrong. D, electric soldering iron. Now, why do you think it is that I use pistol grip soldering irons around here instead of those little pencil type?
Because you don't have as much risk to accidentally burn yourself or something.
Not as likely, because when you let go of that soldering iron trigger, it's going to get cool. But a lot of people will leave that other one, plugged in and forget about it. And it's just, I mean, I've done that myself. I got a little pencil soldering iron at home that mounts in this little stand with a spring, how you stick it in a spring. And as hard as I try to remember to unplug it, I think I'll walk off and leave it, sometimes. But anyway, that's going to be a D. Technician A uses the tool below to tighten or loosen slotted screws. Now, this is kind of dumb, isn't it? Technician B hits the handle of this tool to mark a piece of metal. Who is correct? There's not a person that I know of on the face of the earth that's ever used a screwdriver very much that doesn't occasionally whack it with a hammer. We're all going to hit a screwdriver with a hammer occasionally. It ain't really good for the screwdriver. It's not dangerous, but it's really not good for the screwdriver. The tool manufacturers just drives them crazy. You're not even supposed to use a steel hammer to hit a wood chisel. Did you know that? You're supposed to use a mallet, a plastic mallet to hit a wood chisel. But whatever. Anyway, you know what the right answer to that with technician A. You turn the screw with it. They also say on them snap-on screwdriver, don't use it as a pry bar or a chisel. But who in the Sam Hill has a screwdriver when they don't pry something with it? Of course, if you got to know when. I had two really good screwdrivers out there that were those orange clear handle XLX screwdrivers, and somebody broke the tip off of both of those damn things. But anyway, technician A says this is an Allen key wrench. Technician B says this used on torque style fastener. That's Torx, basically. If you look over there on the wall, I got a little old picture. Are you guys familiar with posit drive screws? You know what those are? You ever heard of a posit drive screw? It looks like a Phillips screw, but it's not a Phillips screw. It's different from a Phillips screw because instead of having a Phillips screwdriver, I need to get one of them new markers I got in there. A Phillips screwdriver is tapered all the way down. You know what I'm saying? But a posit drive is square, except it's got it's got little mountains in between, in between the slots. And the screws, when you look at the head of the screws, ordinarily the head of a Phillips screw looks like this, like that right there. But if it's got little lines like that, and if you look close, you'll see that it's made like this. Very close. You have to look really close to see that it's made that way. That is a posit drive screw. Now, you can get away with taking that out of there with a regular Phillips screwdriver, but a posit drive screw, the difference is if I take a screw like that and I put it in a vise so that the head is sticking up, like this right here, and I take like a Phillips screw and a posit drive screw, and I take a Phillips screwdriver and I stand it in that screw, is it going to stand there? It's going to fall over, isn't it? But if you take a posit drive, it looks just the same as this. If you take a posit drive and you stick it in there, it will stand there. It won't fall out. It's a lot tighter bite, you see.
Chambers where you get a coolant tester?
Huh?
Coolant tester in the office?
Yeah, you need a
borrow it?
Yeah, you need it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Technician A uses the open end of a combination wrench to disconnect the brake line. Technician B uses the tool you see below. Technician B is right. You see that tool below? That's a line wrench. Is that right, Brandon? That's a tubing wrench. Now, Brandon, can you tell us why it's important when you're working down there with fittings and stuff, why you need to have a good bright light? Like if you're putting a radiator on and you're hooking the oil cooler lines and all.
Tyler did that.
Huh?
You talking about that radiator for old man that Tyler done? You want to blame me for it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, listen to him. Okay. Well, what happens is if you're working in the dark and you can't see good, you may cross-thread the fitting and foul up a radiator. It's brand new, and that's what happens sometimes. But if you see, a lot of the times my dad used to fuss at me when I was 22, and he'd say, why don't you get a light, you can see better, kind of thing. I can see just fine. A lot of times when you're working in the dark, you have issues like that. All right, so all the statements are correct except Adjustable wrenches provide a good grip on the nut or bolt because the jaws can move slightly. Ha ha ha. How many of you have rounded something off with a crescent wrench? You ever do that? Yeah, the crescent wrench, you know, if you're turning something that's pretty tight, it's going to round off. And that's one of the things that I don't typically use a lot of crescent wrenches. Well, you know why I quit having crescent wrenches in my toolbox? When I was working down at Sabine, we were down there working we had a shop where we maintained the forklifts and everything, but a lot of dock workers came through there. And I quit having crescent wrenches because everybody wanted to borrow them. And I don't mind all that much, you know, loaning a crescent wrench every now and then, except for the fact that they never came back. And so I quit buying them. Because I didn't use them no way. I just had them in my box, so it seemed like you're supposed to have some, you know. But people kept walking in there borrowing my doggone crescent wrench because they didn't know what size they need, but they can turn that little handle with their thumb, you know. I mean, you know, anyway. Technician A says it's a good idea to use a 6-point socket to break a tight nut loose. It really is. Technician B says it's okay to use chrome sockets with an impact gun as long as the air pressure is less than 90 psi. Really, you're not supposed to use chrome sockets with an impact gun. The black sockets are made of malleable steel, and they're made to take that and all that. So, what are you doing?
Let me know what's in my radiator.
That's not so terribly bad. That's what's supposed to be in there. That's okay. You're good.
And water.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can check it with that refractometer in there. You used that before, haven't you? Huh? That's how you tell how much antifreeze is in it. But you're good with that. It looks to me like that float's doing pretty well. All right. All right. He didn't do the worksheet on that, did he? That refractometer? You know what that is, don't you?
Check the,
And the little purple thing you said.
That's a little thing when you look through it, and you can tell how much antifreeze is there because of light deflection. It's pretty cool. Most people like to use that once they find out what it is. Okay. Now let me hurry up here when we get through, because we're going to be in just 45 minutes or so. We'll be ready to go to lunch, but we're not going to be in here that long. Okay, wait a minute. So 6-point sockets are typically best to use on everything unless it's a 12-point. Where's the place where you find a 12-point bolt head? A common place where you find a 12-point bolt head where you have to have a 12-point socket.
Jeep, cylinder head.
That's one of them. But there's also, what about the tracking the drive shaft out of a Ford? The doggone 12-millimeter 12-point. You got to have a 12-millimeter 12-point. It's not a 6-point bolt. It's 12-point. But anyway, you got more area there, so you can tighten it tighter, and it's also smaller. Okay, let's hurry up here. Which of the following air tools are you least likely to find in an automotive repair facility? A 1/4-inch impact wrench, and I totally disagree with that, because if you walk through a service department or just about any dealership now, everybody in there is going crazy with 1/4-inch air ratchets and impact wrenches. Little 1/4-inch impact wrench is the handiest thing in the world. Yeah. Huh?
D.
6? What?
D.
Oh, D? Yeah, D is the right answer, but I disagree with it. That's the reason I said that, because you're going to find every doggone one of those impact wrenches and air ratchets and all that. I mean, everybody does their own thing. I tell you something else that mechanics use a heck of a lot is those little electric screwdriver drills. You know, if you're working on a dash, you know, because it's all about speed is what it's all about. I mean, you can sit here and do this if you want to, you know, but the guys that are making the money, if you walk through a shop where money's being made, you're going to hear air tools. You see people that are electric drills and all that stuff. And Snap-on also makes a doggone really handy rechargeable impact wrench. You know, it's electric rechargeable impact wrench is handy as all get out. You know, I mean, it's expensive. You know how much a rechargeable DeWalt 3/4-inch drive impact wrench is? Nearly $1,000 for this big old heavy duty rechargeable impact wrench like they use on bulldozers and stuff. All right, let me see here. Let me see. Technician A says a wire brush wheel can help clean sealants and rust off bolt threads. Yeah, well, that's good. Technician B says debris from a die grinder may damage internal engine parts if not properly cleaned. That's right too. So you don't want to have a lot of little particles of crud going down. All of the following are considered personal protective equipment except cushioned socks. Please. All of these are correct except oily shop rags may be disposed of in an open trash bin. Why is that? Why do you not want to throw all these shop towels in an open trash bin?
They're potentially combustible?
Yeah, they're actually, Eddie had a fire down there. He had some shop right, it was at a metal bin that he had for shop towels, but those things went through a chemical heat and caught fire. This has been about 2 months ago. And when the rag man went down there and opened the rag bin, there was nothing but ashes in there, and it just caught fire. And that's what they told me, I'm going through a heat. You know, sometimes stuff like that happens, you know, whenever they've got this chemical reaction takes place, and it makes a lot of heat. I've not seen that personally, but I know that I've heard about it all my life. What's the term for the process of ignition without a flame? Spontaneous combustion. That's what happened to them rags down there that I was just talking about. When using a vehicle lift, which of the following is a good practice? Center the work on the lift, making sure the lift pads contact the vehicle correctly. Is that right, Brandon? It is it. All right. When lifting a vehicle to perform brake service, Technician A stops the lift when the vehicle is about a foot above the floor and shakes the vehicle to ensure it's stable. You need to do that. And Technician B lowers the vehicle onto the lift mechanical locks after it's hoisted to the necessary height. Now, sometimes we do that around here, sometimes we don't. It's really important to do that on the front end lift, because when you lower it onto the locks on the front end lift, it's level. If you just go up and stop, it's slightly unlevel, but when you lower it onto the locks, those locks are adjusted so that it settles out level. So just remember that when you get over finally doing front end stuff. And all of these procedures are safe except what? The technician may leave the weight of the vehicle on a floor jack as long as safety standards are in place to catch the vehicle when it falls. You're really not supposed to do that like a lot of times mechanics, you'll see they'll slide a floor jack under there and raise it up, and then they'll put jack stands under there so that if it falls, the jack stands will catch it. You know, you really ought to lower it so that the weight of the car is sitting on the jack stands, you know, because that's a mechanical thing. Which statement below is correct? When you jump start a dead battery, the last connection should be made where? Anybody know? Come on, y'all. Metal body or the frame of the vehicle, right? And we got 2 more questions left. All of these statements are true except water may be used to extinguish a Class B fire. So which of the following is correct concerning first aid? Never let other person's bodily fluids contact your skin. There was a couple of people that I know of that, you know, this one guy got a landscaping business. This guy that had a chainsaw accident, you know, didn't hurt his leg all that bad, but he's bleeding some, you know what I mean? And so he was trying to stop the bleeding, so this other guy's holding it with his hands. And of course, when you're doing landscaping with rose bushes and all, you always got stuff all over your hands. And he caught something from that guy whose blood he was, you know, when he's trying to hold that. I mean, it got in his blood, got in his blood, and he wound up getting HIV from that.
This is ours.
Did that come off?
No, I wouldn't put it back on.
Oh, okay.
I won't need a wrench.
Outstanding performance. Yeah. We left one of the hubcaps off. Okay. Somebody could have died, you know that?
I didn't even know.
Yeah. Huh?
I didn't worry about it.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's one of the nummy things.
It is one of those.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that, guys. But anyway, that concludes